Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 10 Part 80 based on novel. So let's start. Within a large hall, two equally pretty and dazzling young ladies were staring at each other with a smile on their face. This was supposed to be a pleasant sight. However, right now, Lin Dong was drenched in cold sweat. Clearly, he did not know what was going on. When the crowd saw this scene, they were immediately startled. However, soon after, they began to grow curious. This was especially the case for the Darkness Master and the rest. With a strange expression in their eyes, they looked at Ying Huan. It was clear that their curiosity were piqued by the latter's reaction. Lin Dong coughed dryly. At a moment like this, he had to demonstrate his pride as a man. Hence, he directly inserted himself between the two of them before he spoke helplessly to Tang Xinlian. I don't recall ever mentioning something like this. Is that so? Tang Xinlian blinked her eyes. After which, she curled her red lips before she casually said, perhaps my memory has failed me. Lin Dong was at a loss for words. Women were indeed frightening creatures. With a bewitching smile on her face, Tang Xinlian looked at Ying Huan and said, you won't hold this against me, will you? Ying Huan gave a faint smile and shook her head. However, when she turned her head, she gave Lin Dong an extremely cold glare. She had finally learned what kind of great blessing Lin Dong had enjoyed during this so-called cultivation trip in the chaotic demon sea. All right, let's focus on the important issue at hand. Lin Dong felt helpless. All he could do was to adopt a stern expression. The two women smiled knowingly upon seeing this before the both of them finally toned down. Currently, forming an alliance is the only solution. Tang Xinlian nodded and continued, according to the information that we obtained, certain sea regions have already been turned into a bloodbath by the Yimo. In fact, some of the weaker factions have begun to retreat to the larger sea regions. If we form an alliance to fight the Yimo now, it would draw quite a number of factions. However, at that time, many factions will swarm over and the alliance formed will also be a massive and complicated one. In fact, whether it can even function properly is up in the air. Therefore, even much less needs to be said about fighting the Yimo. Lin Dong nodded. It was not always the case that more is better. In a situation like this, after gathering everyone together, if there were no proper controls in place, it might even cause the situation to deteriorate. Even though back in the demon region, Lin Dong managed to establish the Four Titans Palace, he knew that his Four Titans Palace was child's play compared to an alliance which encompassed the entire chaotic demon sea. Moreover, he had to expend a massive amount of effort just to establish his Four Titans Palace. Therefore, if he had to form an alliance encompassing the entire chaotic demon sea, it was likely impossible for him to succeed even at the expense of his life. Although it is very troublesome, it shouldn't be a difficult task thanks to Miss Xinlian's leadership abilities, am I right? Lin Dong said with a smile. He was not a fool and would naturally not get involved in matters that he knew he could not handle. Moreover, there was a perfect candidate at hand. I am already very busy. Can you please not create additional work for me? Tang Xinlian rolled her eyes at Lin Dong. However, she sighed helplessly after she saw the latter's bitter expression as she said, you caused me so much trouble the moment you arrived. In order to make a difference, we need some of the largest and most powerful factions in the chaotic demon sea to join our alliance. Amongst the human tribes, we must rope in the 10,000 Sea Heaven Palace. They are an old and well-established faction in the chaotic demon sea and have a powerful reputation. As for the members of the Sea Demon tribe, the Immortal Sage Whale clan is a must. Can you guys convince the both of them? Tang Xinlian looked at Lin Dong's group and asked. 10,000 Sea Heaven Palace, huh? Is their founder the 10,000 Sea Old Man? Is he still alive? The Flame Master thought for a moment before he asked. I? However, the 10,000 Sea Old Man died many years ago when he failed to pass the second reincarnation tribulation. Their current chief is his grandson and he should have passed one reincarnation tribulation. He can be considered as one of the top experts in the chaotic demon sea. In that case, it shouldn't be a problem. The 10,000-year-old man once received some pointers from me. The Flame Master laughed. However, his words left Lin Dong in shock. Promptly, he shook his head helplessly. It seems like one must not underestimate these antiques. Leave the immortal sage whale clan to me. The Chaos Master laughed. Amongst the members of the Sea Demon tribe, he was considered as a legend. Therefore, as a member of the tribe, it was not difficult for him to convince the Sea Demon tribe to join their alliance. In that case, let's announce the news today. I believe that many factions within the chaotic demon sea will quickly send their men over. Tang Xinlian nodded and said, "All right." Everyone exchanged glances before nodding. This huge event, which would shake the entire chaotic demon sea, was finally settled. After they made their decision, the Flame Divine Hall became extremely busy. Countless figures rushed out, before they began to spread the news at a frightening speed. Given their speed, it was likely that the Flame Divine Hall would become the most lively place in the entire chaotic demon sea within a short 2 to 3 days. Although he was well prepared, the commotion caused by the alliance seemed to have exceeded Lin Dong's expectations. Within merely 2 days, the commotion was feedback to the Flame Divine Hall. After which, various experts from all across the chaotic demon sea began to flood the Flame Divine Hall in a locust-like fashion. In fact, the scene was even more intense compared to the scene stirred up by the competition over the Thunderbolt ancestral symbol. On the top of a building within the Flame Divine Hall, Lin Dong looked at the locust-like crowd which came from the distant horizon before they rushed towards the city. Then, he sighed involuntarily. This is indeed the chaotic demon sea. Lin Dong sighed emotionally. The size of the chaotic demon sea had likely surpassed that of the demon region and the 4 great Xian regions. In fact, the number of factions here was as numerous as the stars. Typically, he might not have realized it. However, owing to the special circumstances, he finally began to realize how frighteningly massive it was. Of course, from a certain point of view, it also demonstrated just how dangerous the current situation in the chaotic demon sea was. After all, the competition within the chaotic demon sea was extremely intense. Therefore, unless one really reached a point whereby one had no other choice, it was likely that no one would even think about joining the alliance. Let's head over as well. Behind him, Ying Huan said. Although the Flame Divine Hall was an elite faction in the chaotic demon sea, they were unable to get everyone to submit to them. Therefore, in order to ensure that the alliance was formed successfully, they had to serve as a deterrent. Lin Dong nodded. Promptly, he swung his sleeve before silver light wrapped around the both of them. The next time they appeared, they were already standing in front of a massive square. Meanwhile, there were throngs of people gathered in the square and they extended to the limits of one's vision. Furthermore, all their auras were extremely powerful. Clearly, the various factions in the chaotic demon sea have sent powerful members over to the Flame Divine Palace to serve as their representative. This is quite a grand event. Lin Dong grinned upon seeing this. All of a sudden, after he and Ying Huan entered the square, a clear joyous loud voice sounded from behind them. "Big brother Lin Dong." When Lin Dong heard this cry, he was stunned momentarily. After which, he turned around and saw a white figure pouncing over from afar. Finally, she directly leapt into his embrace. Meanwhile, that frighteningly force caused his body to tremble gently. Lin Dong hurriedly grabbed that person and held her in his embrace. After which, he glanced at her and saw an exquisite and cute face appearing in front of him, Ling Shan. Lin Dong was stunned when he saw the young lady in his embrace. It turns out that she was Mu Lingshan, someone whom he met back in the chaotic demon sea. Back then, she was merely a little girl who had a pair of cute pigtails. However, as of now, those pigtails had become a dark black lively ponytail. Meanwhile, her small and cute body had gradually become well proportioned and she no longer looked as childish as before. "Hee, big brother Lin Dong, it is really you." Mu Lingshan was laughing as she tugged Lin Dong. Meanwhile, there was a joyous smile on her small face. Clearly, she was extremely happy about the fact that she was able to meet Lin Dong here. "Why are you here?" When he saw her, Lin Dong felt some joy in his heart. After which, He grinned as he rubbed Mu Lingshan's extremely lively dark black ponytail, before he secretly sighed in his heart. The little girl from before was all grown up. I came with Grandpa and the rest. Mu Lingshan used her small fair hand to point to her back. At that spot, one could see two figures standing there. One of them had a tall figure and was quite handsome. He was Mu Lingshan's third grandfather, Mu Lan. On Mu Lan's left was a white-haired old man. He was a skinny-looking old man, and he was fondling his beard as he looked at them with a smile. Elder Mu Lan. Lin Dong cupped his hands together towards Mu Lan and laughed. Mu Lan had helped him out immensely in the past and he had always remembered this favor. Ha ha, Lin Dong. As of now, even I cannot match up to you. I'm afraid that I don't deserve to be addressed as an elder by you. Mu Lan laughed and walked over. Meanwhile, there was some shock in his eyes as he looked at Lin Dong. When they parted ways back then, Lin Dong was merely at the profound death stage. However, as of now, he could even feel some pressure from the latter. This is my brother, Mu Qian. Greetings to Elder Mu Qian. Lin Dong cupped his hands together. It was likely that this old man was the first grandfather that Mu Lingshan had mentioned. In fact, the fluctuation emitted by the latter took Lin Dong by surprise. It turns out that this old man was actually a peak expert who had passed one reincarnation tribulation. Haha, you must be young friend Lin Dong, am I right? This girl has frequently talked about you after she came back and moss has grown in my old ears after listening to her. Mu Qian smiled warmly and said. Lin Dong grinned and patted Mu Lingshan's little head, before he said, Is Elder Mu Qian here to participate in the Alliance gathering? I? Elder Chaos came down personally and asked us to. Our immortal sage whale clan does not dare to snub him. Mu Qian smilingly nodded and said. In that case, please enter. When Lin Dong realized that this was not an appropriate venue for a conversation, he smiled before he led them into the square. The instant he entered the square, he surveyed his surroundings and saw that numerous experts had gathered in this place. In fact, extending his sight, he realized that he could see no end to them. Meanwhile, he could sense that as numerous auras continuously rose and gathered in the sky, even the clouds in the sky were being blown away. Elder Mu Qian, please take a seat. Soon after they entered, members of the Flame Divine Hall quickly stepped forward and welcomed them. Then, they placed the Mu Qian trio in the square's front seats. Evidently, the front row seats were only occupied by those who possessed extremely formidable strength. In fact, every one of them seated in the front row were all famous and renowned experts in the chaotic demon sea. Right in front of them were a couple of seats. At this moment, the Flame Master and the rest were all seated on them with their eyes shut. Meanwhile, countless pairs of eyes swept over them, while their eyes were all filled with wild heat and excitement. Let's go. Ying Huan directly walked towards the most eye-catching seat in the middle. Moreover, she was also holding onto Lin Dong's hand. Cough, I can just sit at the side. When Lin Dong saw that they were headed towards the most prominent seats in the entire square, he immediately coughed dryly. However, Ying Huan chose to ignore him. Her body moved before she directly rushed towards those seats. After which, she sat down with a calm expression before she dragged Lin Dong and forced him to sit beside her. These seats were the most prominent spot in the entire square. In fact, even those peak experts in the chaotic demon sea like Mu Qian were unqualified to seat on them. However, an unfamiliar man like Lin Dong was sitting on them. This undoubtedly attracted the attention of everyone present. Soon after, many stealthy whispers erupted. Who is that young fella? Was there someone like him amongst the 8 ancient masters? Why does he seem a little familiar? It seems like he is the man who won the competition at the Flame Divine Hall back then. He is called Lin Dong, am I right? Are you referring to that younger generation member? He is truly ill-mannered. How dare he occupy that seat? Beside him, the Flame Master and the rest slowly opened their eyes. Meanwhile, with a gentle smile in their eyes, they looked at the embarrassed Lin Dong. It was as though they wanted to see how he would deal with the situation. Lin Dong had also detected their actions. When he heard the complaints from all across the square, he did not fret. Instead, he gave a gentle smile before he slammed his hand gently on the stone table. Soon after, a frightening aura swept across the place and enveloped the entire square. After they were enveloped by his frightening aura, every complaint came to a sudden halt. In fact, even Mu Qian and the other peak experts from the chaotic demon sea, who were seated at the front row, all had great shock within their eyes. This was because even they felt extreme danger when up against his aura. This young man is no simple chap. They quietly exchanged glances while this thought flashed across their minds. At the same time, they completely erased any trace of doubt within their hearts. After Lin Dong unleashed his aura, the square, which was packed with numerous top experts from the chaotic demon sea, was silent for a moment. After which, the emotions within many people's eyes were in flux, before they finally turned grave. In fact, when they turned to look at Lin Dong once again, there wasn't a hint of doubt in their eyes. The people here were largely famous individuals within the chaotic demon sea, and they naturally possessed great strength. Therefore, they were able to deduce Lin Dong's strength from his aura. In fact, they were certain that he had reached the reincarnation stage. Of course, his exact strength within the reincarnation stage could only be determined by the peak experts from the chaotic demon sea, who were sitting in the front row seats of the square. After all of them had passed one reincarnation tribulation. Nonetheless, they still felt endangered when they caught a whiff of Lin Dong's aura. Therefore, this allowed them to understand that even though this young man in front of them seemed like an ordinary reincarnation stage expert, it was likely that they were no match for him in an actual fight. Young friend Lin Dong is truly amazing. Mu Qian fondled his beard as he remarked to Mu Lan by the side. Very terrifying. Mu Lan could only nod and sigh. After all, it was truly difficult for him to reconcile with the fact that this powerful expert, who could remain collected even when up against numerous top experts from the chaotic demon sea, was actually that weak young youth back then. Of course. Big brother Lin Dong is definitely stronger than first grandpa. Beside them, Mu Lingshan said proudly. When Mu Qian saw how quickly his granddaughter had turned her back on them, he could only shake his head helplessly. After which, he turned his head and smiled towards a blue-robed old man, who was at a short distance away. He was the current palace chief of the 10,000 Sea Heaven Palace, Wan Xian. Unexpectedly, he had turned up as well. The size of this gathering is truly frightening. Mu Qian surveyed his surroundings. After which, he realized that most of the top experts within the chaotic demon sea were present. For more than thousands of years, this was the first time a situation like this has ever occurred in the chaotic demon sea. As of now, the chaotic demon sea is in turmoil. As the Yimo began their rampage, though our immortal sage whale clan was able to temporarily hide from their attacks, this is not a long-term solution. Mu Lan said. That's right. Mu Qian nodded. Promptly, he looked at the countless experts present before his elderly heart began to feel a tinge of pride. After all, if they could form an alliance successfully, why would they need to fear those Yimo? A bright sun hung high in the sky. Suddenly, a gong sound resounded across this massive square. After which, the entire place became silent, before many pairs of eyes looked towards the front. At that spot, stood a fiery red enchanting lovely figure. She was Tang Xinlian from the Flame Divine Hall. Everyone, I believe that all of you should know why my Flame Divine Hall has organized this gathering. Currently, the Yimo are on a rampage and the ancient world war provides us with a glimpse as to how powerful these Yimo are. In fact, perhaps many of you here have personally witnessed this for yourselves. Tang Xinlian used her pretty eyes to survey the place as her clear voice echoed across the square. Based on the information obtained by my Flame Divine Hall, 8 sea regions have been butchered by the Yimo. Meanwhile, the 120 factions within have all been exterminated. Corpses litter the ground and blood flows like rivers wherever they passed. I believe that no faction here can confidently claim that they can fight the Yimo by themselves, am I right? No one answered. Meanwhile, all of them had a grave expression on their faces. In fact, some of them were even grieving secretly. Evidently, some of them had already suffered heavy losses after the Yimo attacked. May I know what Miss Tang has in mind? The old man in blue robes mused for a moment before he asked. It is not an overly complicated one. In summary, it is to form an alliance to fight them. Tang Xinlian beamed before she continued. 5 ancient masters have asked my flame divine hall to band everyone together and form an alliance to fight the Yimo. Some buzzing noises were emitted from within this massive square. After which, many experts turned to look at each other. Before they arrived, they had already vaguely guessed what was going on. However, they were still a little shocked when they heard the news personally. In fact, a mega alliance that encompassed the entire chaotic demon sea had never been established before. The buzzing noise spread all across the place. Even though many powerful experts felt inclined to join, they chose to remain silent at this moment. After all, even though they were being pushed into dire straits by the Yimo, they had established their own factions after much sweat and tears. Therefore, once an alliance was formed, would they still be able to retain control of their respective faction? Everyone, this so-called alliance is merely meant to counter the Yimo. Once this alliance is formed, all of us will attack and defend as one. In order to prevent one party from gaining control, we will nominate some of the more renowned factions and form a council. Moreover, every important decision must go through this council. Furthermore, above this council, we will also create an elder council. They will be staffed by the 5 ancient masters and Lin Dong, and they will be in charge of supervising the alliance. After which, every faction will dispatch their elite fighting force to create a devil-slaying army. Meanwhile, the spatial master will also intervene and create a teleportation formation in every large sea region. Therefore, if any sea region is under attack by the Yimo, the devil-slaying army will show up immediately. Tang Xinlian stood tall and proud, as her clear voice spread. Operating a massive alliance like this was supposed to be a complicated and difficult task. However, in her hands, she was able to simplify the operations and make it run efficiently. Moreover, by distributing the authority, she was able to reassure certain factions that were worried that the Flame Divine Hall was planning to take advantage of this alliance to expand their base. The huge square was completely silent. Meanwhile, the eyes of countless individuals were glimmering, while their hearts began to shake. It seems like such an alliance was indeed workable. No one objected to the fact that the 5 ancient masters were members of the Elder Council. After all, given their fame and reputation, they were indeed qualified for the job. However, the crowd was staring at Lin Dong with a strange expression in their eyes. This was because even a top expert within the chaotic demon sea like Mu Qian was not qualified to hold such a position. However, despite his tender age, Lin Dong was able to do so. This inevitably left many of them dumbstruck. Lin Dong also quietly nodded upon hearing this. Meanwhile, a glint of admiration flashed across the Flame Master and the rest's eyes. Tang Xinlian's leadership abilities were truly frightening. It was likely that with her abilities, once the alliance was formed, the chaotic demon sea would be able to unleash a frightening fighting force. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all in full support of this arrangement. What do you guys think? The Flame Master slowly said. However, his low and deep voice caused the entire place to turn silent. We have already fought with the Devil Prison in the past. Perhaps the chaos in the chaotic demon sea is only the first wave. Soon after, the Yimo would sweep across the entire world. At that time, the Second World War will truly begin. Will any egg emerge unscathed after the nest is broken? If we do not form an alliance now, countless living beings in this world shall be destroyed. The hearts of countless experts pounded upon hearing the Flame Master's low and deep voice. If a world war was to break out, it was likely that none of them would be able to escape unscathed. Moreover, in order to increase our fighting strength, we will open the ancestral citadel left behind by our teacher back then. At that time, we will allow those who have reached the samsara stage to enter it. If you get lucky, it might help you to advance to the reincarnation stage. The Flame Master's final words immediately caused the entire place to erupt into an uproar. In fact, countless samsara stage experts stood up immediately, before they stared at the Flame Master with heated eyes. The atmosphere in the square had reached its peak. After all, that offer was far too tempting. The Flame Master is right. My 10,000 Sea Heaven Palace is willing to join the alliance. When he saw that the time was ripe, the blue-robed old man took the lead and stood up. Then he cupped his hands together and said in a respectful manner, "My immortal sage whale clan is also willing to join the alliance and fight the Yimo together." Mu Qian also stood up and said, "My heaven sea cliff is also willing to join the alliance." Another top expert from the chaotic demon sea stood up and said, "The sea sword pavilion is willing. We are also willing to join the alliance." Within this massive square, many figures suddenly stood up, before low cries sounded in waves. Finally, their voices gathered and shot towards the clouds. Meanwhile, the desire to fight began to rise stealthily. When Lin Dong stared at this blood-boiling scene in front of him, he involuntarily emitted a soft sigh from his lips. Thanks to the Flame Masters group and the pressure from the Yimo, this alliance was established rather quickly. However, whether this alliance could truly unleash its might would still depend on Tang Xinlian's abilities. After an alliance was successfully formed, the next step would be to settle the complicated operational procedures. However, compared to when Lin Dong established his Four Titans Palace, running a mega alliance like this was evidently much more complicated. Fortunately, Lin Dong did not have to worry about it. These matters naturally fell onto Tang Xinlian's shoulders. Meanwhile, she began to display her leadership abilities that left others in shock. Within merely 5 days, the alliance had already begun to take shape. Lin Dong and the Spatial Master also acted in unison during these days. They headed to the various large sea regions and built teleportation formations that were interconnected with each other. By doing so, once the devil-slaying army was formed, they would be able to stop the rampaging Yimo. Even though Lin Dong had advanced to the reincarnation stage, this dangerous and exhausting task still left him bitterly exhausted. In fact, by the time he returned to the Flame Divine Hall, his face was a little pale. Within the large hall, when Tang Xinlian, who was busy managing the alliance, saw Lin Dong, she smiled. After which, she personally served him tea and said, "Well done. I caused you so much trouble. This little bit of hardship is nothing." Lin Dong received the fragrant tea, before he shook his head and said, "It's not much of a hassle. Besides, you are not the only one involved. The Yimo have been on a rampage in the chaotic demon sea and this will definitely affect our Flame Divine Hall eventually." Tang Xinlian smilingly said, "Besides, you are not one of the ancient masters. Yet, you chose to involve yourself in such matters. I am not as noble and selfless as them." Lin Dong laughed bitterly. "Though they are indeed highly respected individuals, you aren't so bad yourself." Tang Xinlian smiled. Meanwhile, there was an enchanting expression within her long eyes. At this moment, she did not carry her usual cool and heroic demeanor. Instead, the smile on her face had become a lot gentler and prettier. As she stared at Lin Dong, there was clearly a gentle emotion within her eyes. In fact, it was extremely difficult to connect her to that lady, who had once stood confidently in front of countless experts from the chaotic demon sea, before she managed to convince all of them. "That's right, how is Xin Qing? You did not bully her, did you?" Tang Xinlian suddenly recalled Xin Qing, who had accompanied Lin Dong to the demon region back then, before she asked. Lin Dong shook his head helplessly before he explained what happened to the Nine-Tailed tribe. "I never expected that girl to have such a chance encounter. It is likely that she will be quite incredible after she leaves her seclusion," Tang Xinlian said in a somewhat surprised manner. Lin Dong smiled and nodded. He was just about to speak when a spatial fluctuation once again appeared in the hall. After which, the Spatial Master, Flame Master, Ying Huan, and the rest showed up in a flash. "We should have set up all the teleportation formations." The Spatial Master smiled at the two of them and said, "We have troubled all of you." Tang Xinlian hurriedly replied. Ying Huan sat down elegantly on her chair. Her delicate hand was holding an emerald jade cup. After a brief moment of silence, she used her icy blue eyes to stare at Lin Dong before she said, "We will be opening the ancestral citadel tomorrow." All of a sudden, Lin Dong felt that the atmosphere within the large hall had turned quiet. When he once again saw the faint smile on Ying Huan's face, though he felt stifled in his heart, in the end, he nodded his head gently. The next day, Within the flame divine hall, a couple of figures stood in midair. Meanwhile, in their vicinity, there were countless experts staring at them from afar. Moreover, all of them had an excited expression within their eyes, which could not be concealed. Clearly, through certain means, they learned that today was the day whereby 6 ancient masters would join forces to open the ancestral citadel, a place left behind by the legendary symbol ancestor. It was rumored that if one trains within the ancestral citadel, one would have a much higher chance of making a breakthrough. This was especially the case for Samsara stage experts. In fact, they were able to make use of it to take the most important step forward, and advance to the reincarnation stage. This frightening ability caused countless people to become envious. In fact, it was likely that only a legendary figure like the symbol ancestor could leave such a divine item behind. Ying Huan and the other 5 stood quietly in the sky. Although there wasn't an earth-shaking commotion, everyone could sense the frightening waves churning beneath the calm exterior. Lin Dong was standing at a short distance away from them. Behind him, Qingxi, Qingtan, Mo Luo and Tang Xinlian were also looking in the same direction. Let's begin. Ying Huan glanced at the 5 of them before she softly said. The Darkness Master and the 4 others exchanged glances with each other upon hearing this. Then, a complicated emotion flashed across their eyes before they gently nodded. Yang. Ying Huan beckoned with her hand before a warm light shot out from within Lin Dong's body. Finally, it turned into the ancestor stone and floated in midair. After which, Yang's body also appeared outside the ancestor stone. Do you really want to open the ancestral citadel? Yang glanced at Ying Huan. Then, he hesitated for a moment before he asked. At a time like this, do you still think that I am joking? Ying Huan asked faintly. Yang laughed bitterly before he nodded helplessly. Then, his body moved before he tunneled into the ancestor stone. After which, the ancestor stone landed in Ying Huan's palm. Ying Huan toyed with the warm ancestor stone in her hand. Then, a glint flashed across her pretty blue eyes, before she tilted her head and smiled at Lin Dong, who was at a short distance away. When Lin Dong saw her smile, he did not feel the slightest joy. Instead, he felt that the uneasy sensation within his heart had intensified. When he realized this, he promptly rushed forward before he appeared beside Ying Huan. Grabbing her wrist, he asked, "Can we stop now? I can train by myself." Ying Huan lowered her pretty eyes and replied, "The ancestral citadel is a treasure left behind by teacher to help us to fight the Yimo. It is able to increase the fighting strength of our forces. Therefore, I am not opening the ancestral citadel just for you. It is also for the sake of winning the Second World War." Lin Dong gritted his teeth gently. "Don't worry. I'll be fine." Ying Huan smiled. Then, she extended her delicate arms before she gently hugged Lin Dong. After which, she swung her jade-like arm, before the ancestor stone in her hand shot forward. Let's begin. A bright and intense light suddenly erupted from within the ancestor stone. After which, those light rays entwined in the sky before they seemingly formed a massive formation. "It is your turn now." Yang's voice was emitted from within the ancestor stone. Flame. The Flame Master was the first to act. With a grave expression on his face, he stomped gently with his foot. Promptly, monstrous flames swept out from within his body. Moreover, these flames were all made up of yuan power and they were extremely hot. In fact, they were filled with the strength of the blazing ancestral symbol. The Flame Master swung his sleeve, before the frightening yuan power flames promptly charged into that huge formation. Immediately, they caused the formation to become increasingly solidified. Space. A loud cry was emitted from within this place, before silver yuan power spluttered forth. Darkness. Chaos. Thunderbolt. Another 3 equally frightening energy whizzed forward. Finally, they entwined with one another. In fact, due to those frightening energy, even the world began to tremble. 5 frightening streams of energy poured into that light formation. After which, a bright and resplendent light erupted from within the formation. Meanwhile, one could vaguely see an ancient citadel located within that light. After they did their part, the Flame Master and the 4 others turned their heads and looked at Ying Huan. After which, the latter clenched her teeth gently before an ancient icy symbol surfaced in her hand. Promptly, her originally icy blue pretty eyes became much colder. Ice. A voice that seemed capable of freezing the air itself left Ying Huan's lips. Promptly, she waved her jade-like hands, before snow-white cold aura began to spread in all directions. Then, they actually transformed into a huge ice phoenix, before it flapped its wings and soared. Finally, that phoenix charged into the formation. After that large ice phoenix charge into the formation, the 5 streams of energy originally present in the formation were forced to take a few steps back. However, soon after, as the 6 of them manipulated their respective energy, the 6 frightening streams of energy began to merge. Finally, they assimilated completely with the formation itself. Rumble. Right after the 6 streams of energy merged, that massive formation began to tremble violently. Following which, bright light erupted before that blurry ancient citadel began to look increasingly vivid. Ying Huan and the other 5 continued to channel their frightening energy. This directly caused the surrounding yuan power to churn and boil wildly. Form. Suddenly, the pupils of Ying Huan's group hardened. After which, all of them formed a mysterious seal with their hands, before a strange ripple began to spread. After that ripple was transmitted into the huge formation, the formation began to tremble violently. After the light gradually scattered, white fog rose. Following which, a huge ancient citadel had actually appeared above the formation from out of nowhere. The ancient citadel looked relatively old and it did not look like a luxurious place. The citadel's surroundings were also covered with mysterious and obscure symbols. Meanwhile, a mysterious and obscure fluctuation, which could not be described with words, spread. Vaguely, it seemed like divine music was playing as well. Is this the ancestral citadel? Countless individuals stared at this ancient citadel, which had appeared within the formation, with wild heat in their eyes. Was this the object left behind by that legendary symbol ancestor? Currently, there was a light barrier outside the citadel, forming a natural obstacle which prevented anyone from entering. Obviously, not everyone could enter a place like this. Ancestral citadel. Lin Dong lifted his head to stare at that ancient citadel. Soon after, he turned to look at Ying Huan, who was standing in front of him. Following which, he quickly stepped forward and asked in a concerned manner, "You all right?" Currently, Ying Huan had a slightly pale expression on her pretty face. She faced Lin Dong before she smiled and shook her head. After which, she stealthily kept her small delicate hand within her sleeve before she said, "Let's go in together." After she spoke those words, she headed directly towards the ancestral citadel. When Lin Dong saw this, he hesitated for a moment before he quickly followed behind. When Ying Huan approached the citadel, the ice symbol in her hand flashed twice. Immediately, the light barrier outside the formation slowly tore apart. Following which, Ying Huan's body moved before she dashed inside. Lin Dong quickly followed her in. His feet had only just landed in the ancestral citadel when he realized that his body had become much heavier. He lifted his head in surprise, only to realize that there were countless tiny raindrops falling within the ancestral citadel. Moreover, it seemed as though these rain droplets were able to float as they did not land on the ground. When Lin Dong extended his hand to touch one of them, his heart suddenly shook. This was because he realized that there were reincarnation fluctuations hidden within these rain droplets. What a frightening creation! Lin Dong was completely bewildered. It's no wonder the ancestral citadel could vastly increase the odds that one could make a successful breakthrough to the reincarnation stage. It turns out there were actually such mysteries here. This is only the outer part of the ancestral citadel, Ying Huan said softly. However, her footsteps did not stop as she headed directly towards the deepest part of the ancestral citadel. Lin Dong quickly followed behind. The both of them crossed many courtyards before they finally arrived at the deepest part of the ancestral citadel. Currently, the square was filled with lush green trees. Moreover, these trees were all emitting powerful reincarnation ripples. This caused Lin Dong to be bewildered. This was indeed an item left behind by the symbol ancestor. Lin Dong surveyed the place. Finally, he focused his attention on the middle of the rock square. At that spot, he saw a stone statue. Meanwhile, that stone statue was holding onto a wooden staff. However, for some unknown reason, Lin Dong was unable to see his face. In fact, he felt like there was an incomparably mysterious light surging on that face, which prevented anyone from probing. While Lin Dong was staring at that mysterious stone statue, he suddenly realized that the 3 ancestral symbols within his body were emitting a buzzing sound. In fact, it was a respectful and reverent noise. This caused the shock within his heart to intensify. Other than the symbol ancestor, who else in this world could make the ancestral symbols reveal such emotions? Is that the symbol ancestor? Lin Dong asked cautiously. Ying Huan nodded gently. After which, she walked to the front of the stone statue, before she knelt down gently. Upon seeing this, Lin Dong also knelt down beside her. Ignoring the strength of the symbol ancestor, just the latter's desire to protect this world, was sufficient to get Lin Dong to kneel down and respect him sincerely. Teacher? Ying Huan looked at the stone statue, before grief and yearning surged within her eyes. A long while later, she finally kowtowed 3 times in front of that stone statue before she finally stood up. There is a training ground created by teacher within this stone statue. I will send you inside. Moreover, unless you successfully create a divine palace, you will not be able to escape. Ying Huan said. Huh? Lin Dong was stunned. He laughed bitterly. Isn't this a little too cruel? It was no mean feat to form a divine palace. Otherwise, the Ice Master wouldn't be the only one amongst the 8 ancient masters who was able to do so. Why are you doubting yourself? Ying Huan used her icy blue pretty eyes to stare at Lin Dong before she asked. Lin Dong inhaled a deep breath and nodded slowly. Then, he extended his arms before he pulled Ying Huan into his embrace. Finally, he softly said, "You can be rest assured. Like I said, I will definitely surpass her." Ying Huan gently leaned her head on his shoulder before she said, "The training ground within the stone statue has a time warp ratio of 1 to 10. Previously, your strength has soared far too rapidly. You can take this opportunity to stabilize your strength." Lin Dong nodded. The symbol ancestor was truly incredible. In fact, he was even able to do something as unbelievable as distorting the flow of time. Go in. Ying Huan gently swung her hand, before that stone statue began to squirm. After which, a light halo appeared. Meanwhile, it seemed as though there was an endless void within that light halo. When Lin Dong saw this, he nodded solemnly. Without further ado, he walked forward. After which, he entered the light halo in front of Ying Huan's eyes. That light halo shook, before it disappeared stealthily. When Ying Huan saw this sight, she released a deep breath. Subsequently, she extended her small hand from under her sleeve. As she looked at her transformed right hand, a complicated emotion flashed across her pretty eyes. This video will end here.